Hello, hello, and welcome to Writer's Lunch on a day that is too beautiful to do anything other than be outside. I am happy to be here today and fill in instead of talking about my what am I thinking? Instead of talking about punctuation, I'm totally going to do a history of zines. Since I am missing some of my co-hosts right here, give me a moment as I cast this over to Facebook and we'll be ready to go. But definitely toss anything in the chat that you guys know about zines, that you like about zines, or have you ever made one yourself? Go. And that should work. It says permissions error, but I'm going to cross my fingers that it's actually working because sometimes it does. Yay, Carrie. I don't know what a zine is. That is lovely to hear. So I'm going to get into a presentation in a moment for sure. But first off, let's look at some examples for sure. So this one is by Rene Cruz. And I used to work in art, so I have kind of some examples for sure. But it is a whole bunch of his drawings, and it is just made out of really simple, like an 8.5, 11 sheet of paper, cut in half and folded and stapled. I have this tiny one right here, which is a diary of Calamity Jane. And this is more literary. So that first one is just art. And this is a very old one, but at the same time, printing even older stuff, Calamity Jane's diaries over a few years of her life. It's hilarious. She's a complainer. She's an old lady. It's pretty funny. One of the first, or the first, literary journal that I got a short story fiction published in is Nebo Literary Journal. And this is from the University of Arkansas Southwest, I believe. I don't really remember which direction. And so it is poems, fiction, art, but all just stapled together. And this is a, university publication, but at like the lowest level possible. So zines are in a way just on the edge of of books for sure. Here's another one that toes the edge as well, and Sarah Kress always sells her poems at Zine Fest. She's been a guest on Writer's Lunch before, but this is kind of a self-published book. It does have a spine. It was professionally printed, but she sells it at Zine Fest, all full of her poems. So it's like a DIY chapbook. Another example as well of a nonfiction comic book. And this is about 12, 16 pages, just a really short one. But this is one that is sold that has a publisher and is very tiny. Meanwhile, a little selection from an anarchist bookstore in Philadelphia that I went to. I love to travel and go to these places, and they have all sorts of different things. This one is anti-Karl Marx, how to throw a music show, a history of James Connolly, the Irish rebel. This one, this says Punk Dangerous Utopia, but I swear this is someone's graduate thesis just turned into a zine. It's got citations at the end. It's just it's funny. It's academic at the same time that it's punk rock, and very relevant to people coming to Writer's Lunch. Lit Fix: How to Support the Literary Ecosystem, of which zines are definitely a big part of it. When you start off at the bottom, when you are working at home, when you're making your stuff, when you feel like you're isolated, you're trying to get things published and stuff like that, sometimes it's tough to take that first step. And I tell you what, when Nebo gave me my first story ever published, that felt amazing. But you can also do it yourself, absolutely. So when we look at kind of the history of zines, I'll show how this is absolutely a historical, well, here we go, a historical medium that has been used for a very long time. So once I hit that, to the left right there is a picture by Raymond Pettibon, who's an artist who ended up starting in zines, but eventually got to the point where he was putting stuff into art galleries, and he's very famous for that. On the right, perhaps, is a medieval manuscript and a satire of anthropomorphic animals, I guess, picking up bodies and stuffing them into the bishop and while he sleeps. So maybe they're like stealing souls or something out of that. But in a way, before you have literature, you have zines. So let's start somewhere with that. Now, I loved doing this, and this is kind of an impromptu thing because our host was not able to make it and talk about punctuation, but that is postponed to next month. And in a way, this kind of built on a bunch of histories that I've done over the past few months. So I was able to grab these from a history of the novel that I had. And in the bridge between medieval romances, which were kind of serial fiction, like if you're watching an anime and just things happen one and again, or a sitcom, it always kind of resets. That's what a medieval romance was like. And then you have Don Quixote, and that is typically noted as the first novel, and it is a satire of those medieval romances. So I'm going to stop right there and say that before that, shortly after the invention of the printing press, satires of popular medieval romances appeared, often pamphlets of only a few pages. These first zines were super important, absolutely, and I kind of pushed the medium of the printing press into being something that could be shorter, easier, and able to be shared very easily and widely. Another effect of this as well is the idea of what can I say? When these were printed, they were not read by just one person. And I know that the screen is up there, but I'm going to hold this up. And that is the Houston Free Press, a newspaper I used to write for when I wrote art criticism. And basically, back in the day, they had a statistic that said for everyone that they print, 7 people read it. And that is a lot of the ethos of zines, where you make it, it's mass produced, it's cheap, but it's also something that goes on and on for quite a while with a lot of different people sharing it. This goes to folk tales as well, and how back in the day you would have, let's say, the Odyssey. And the Odyssey would be told around a campfire by someone who's a professional, but storytellers along the way, either professionals or amateurs, would satirize, twist the stories, make fun of them, and just do kind of one-off stories that took elements of the original but mixed and matched a lot of different parts to it. So we're putting that into the blender with the invention of the printing press, and then you can do movable type, as well as you can do images. You can mass produce them over and over again. And what do you end up with? Well, political pamphlets of the American and the French Revolution were a huge part of fueling discontent. They quickly disseminated commentary on the news of the day. Often they were free. Sometimes they were just sold for pennies. And a mix of political cartoons and political screeds. Thomas Paine, what was it, on Sense? Someone's gonna have to help me out with that. Was a very popular one that is still read today, but there were many pamphlets made back in the day that did a mix of image and text, or had just text and were just a few pages. Not only were these, because this was lower literacy era of Western society, not only were these read aloud in certain situations, but they were passed from one group of people to the next and read widely based on, compared to the number of prints that were made. So moving on from that, early 1800s, By the late 1800s, penny dreadfuls of Victorian London and 19th century Paris entertained a growing literate society, salacious stories, all sorts of things playing on fear and romance in a quickly changing society. They fueled a lot of conspiracy theories. There's lots of strange things in zines back then. And they took this kind of political idea of like change and discontent with society way further. But for the sake from the simple broadsheets of the previous generations, these zines benefited from advances that made for cheaper paper, faster printing, and quicker modes of communication like telegraphs and telephones to print stories from further and further away, which in essence, around 1900 or so, led to a lot of the exoticism for other locales and cultures. You're hearing about Africa, you're hearing about China, you're hearing about the West in the United States. And these cheap little newspapers, which also became pulp novels as well, just totally fueled this change in society. Then we have a different version of it. So a lot of those were kind of newspaper formats. So they were larger or they were book size. And then we have kind of a change, and that's the Tijuana Bibles. Tijuana Bibles and their alter ego Chick Tracts, which some people may have run into. Tijuana Bibles, much less likely, carried zines into the 20th century. Small and easy to conceal, these lewd Bibles were pornography easily hidden in an era of extensive traveling, buses and cars, motel rooms and airplanes. Conversely, Chick Tracts are subversively left places, and these are religious texts, and they were absolutely set out to try and proselytize to the non-believer, to the everyday person, and put fear into them. So there's a lot of horror elements to Chick Tracts and a lot of romance to Tijuana Bibles. Also a lot of, lewdness for sure. But in this kind of short format and cheaply made way of doing things was the only way that like sex and, let's say religious inspired violence were going to get out to the public. So the Chick Tracts are subversively left places, semi-concealed, to be found by unwitting passersby. And I remember, especially as a kid, but I have even these days, opened up a free little library. Or I found one sitting on a park bench. And it's like you have 5 minutes, you pick it up, you look at it, maybe you toss it, maybe not. And the point is for sure to use a small amount of money to spread as widely as you can a certain message, because you're only going to get a certain number of people that really like it. So their small size and concealable nature made them easy to distribute, free, and spread their message, spread the word. A religious word, absolutely. So I kind of took the idea of the Tijuana Bible, easy to hide, then used that hideability in a different way. Though this is not terribly different than how political and cultural outsiders have used zines to get their messages out to the public, from communist manifestos and anarchist bookstores to Jehovah's Witnesses and cult pamphlets. The zine was a popular way throughout the 20th century to raise money in small amounts and press ideologies through aggressive sales. If anybody has ever run into a cult member in public and they're trying to push things for sure, trying to get you to buy something, that absolutely is a way for them to make 5 cents or a dollar or whatever works. If you look on the cover of these, it says objections to anarchism is 4 pence. The make your dreams come true, a communist propaganda bit, is 5 cents. Up in the top in the middle are some very old school Jehovah's Witnesses ones that were given for free for sure. And the On Chanting by Hare Krishna was in the 70s absolutely notorious for being something that was attempted to be sold. People would be trying to get you to listen, get you to learn about their religion and be able to support them as well, because they were committed to an aesthetic way of life. Absolutely. This also indoctrinates members. So by trying to sell things and going out and proselytizing, you are creating an us versus the world mentality. And it isn't that chick track, leave it and maybe something good will happen to it. It is a sales thing straight in front of you. And so that's the different way that zines and really cheap printing have been used over the years. Now, in a very different way, that was the political message right there for sure. But the rise of television and pulp films in the mid 20th century brought about new opportunities for subversive zines, fan art, fan fiction, and one of the earliest fan zines was a romance between Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, an absolute cultural moment for LGBTQ culture, and the herald of a proliferating genre of shipping, aka romantically connecting characters from media that do not actually hook up in the original stuff, especially in an age when that was not going to happen. You know, that was not going to be part of the popular media. This was a way to explore fantasies and push through that without actually, without needing the popular to actually hold it up. So the storylines diverge radically from that. And although these have bifurcated on the internet these days, fan art is still around, fanfic is still around, but and often people who like one like the other, but you don't get it put together nearly as much like you used to back in the fanzines days. But sites like AO3, Archive of Our Own, and Tumblr are absolutely full of things that came from zines. Absolutely. So we push on after that to the 70s, to the 80s, and punk rock flyers and zines. As the here we go. As the technology changed, mimeographs got better, and definitely you can see that in the last slide. A lot of these are copied, not printed, and then copiers themselves. That brought new life to zines. In the 70s and the subsequent decades, from London to LA, the punk aesthetic was a mix of aggressive lettering, collage, and purposely sloppy construction that fit the musical style they advertised. Here's where Raymond Pettibon comes in. He was one artist who went from zines and flyers to the art world mainstream with his paintings still in the same style. And there's one in the example in the bottom left right there, now gracing gallery walls all over the world. And I really love how copiers and the aesthetic of an image deteriorating by being printed again and again became part of the aesthetic of zines. That Slash magazine featuring Debbie Harry on the front of it right there is a great example of the poor image quality is kind of part of the aesthetic. It makes it into a 2D image. And in the bottom right-hand corner, that's another image by Raymond I'm going to say his name right, Raymond Pettibon, and it kind of fits that style. He did it in pen and ink, but definitely that feels influenced by this kind of like again and again copying and deteriorating an image over time. Collage is absolutely a part of this, and this I feel ties a lot of zine art as well to outsider artists. So when you have kind of the punk rock aesthetic, anyone can do it. Anybody can paste things together, write things down, and the anybody can do it notion of literary style with the fanzines and fan fiction. These are absolutely why zines fit into this aesthetic of anybody can do it. Everybody's encouraged to. And I'm going to say the same thing today. I hope you guys watching this realize that it's a good idea to maybe make a zine. You can hand make one. You can do one with some of your fiction that hasn't really gone anywhere, and you just throw it away. You put it onto one of these, and you don't worry about publishing it. But you can use that as a citation. You can say published in blank zine. You are your own publisher. Just get that line on the CV down. Here we go with Moxie by Houston educator and author Jennifer Matthew. Centers around a high schooler who finds her mom's old Riot Girl magazines, those punk rock magazines. and decides to take on society by creating her own zines to fight the power. I love this going from one generation to the next. And each generation that I've kind of looked at before, it jumps from one to the next and evolves. But in this book, there are several illustrated examples of her collaged zines. And if at the end I can show you some of the images out of there, they're cute. And this Moxie story was so good, it was changed into a Netflix film. So if you ever want to check it out, I encourage you to grab the book. As well as you can just watch the movie on Netflix. Absolutely. Now we're moving here to what about zines today? Well, there's an easy way to do that. Look at this. I got the date wrong. Saturday, November 16th at the Orange Show, an Outsider Art Space in Houston, Zine Fest 2024 will be there. Part of a constellation of Zine Fests across the world. The history of zines is celebrated annually by artists and writers, keeping the tradition of medieval satirists alive for over 6 centuries. This free event with over 100 artists who sell their art cheaply or give it away, Zine Fest is an amazing opportunity for budding creatives to get their work out to the public. And in the last 2 examples, as well as talking about this in Zine Fest, it's like really low barrier to entry. You can absolutely be a part of zines. You can use it to advance your career. You can do it as a one-off, just kind of a fun hobby thing as well. But it isn't just that. It does, like Raymond Pettibon's work, leach into the art world as well. So this is the artist who is the featured zine maker this year at Zine Fest Houston, and that's Ganzir. So he originally began his career in Cairo, but was deemed a political subversive during the 2011 Egyptian revolution due to his street art. There's an example in the top corner right there. Ganzir was detained after he was reported on for distributing stickers, just stickers, depicting the Mask of Freedom image that depicts a mannequin's torso with a head sheathed in a gimp mask, decorated with 2 miniature wings. That is absolutely a typo and several in there. My apologies. Anyway, fleeing his home country, Ganzir has continued to make work across the world in Germany, Poland, Jordan, Holland, Hawaii, Finland, New York, LA, Denver, and now Houston, where he lives. And he's actually going to be the featured artist this year at Zine Fest and teach a zine making workshop with Writespace in December as well. So what is a zine? I have a definition after doing all this research. It doesn't always work, but it is artistic, it is literary, it is political, it is cheap, and it is mass-produced. There are some exceptions for sure, absolutely. In the image right there is an example of the easiest zine you can make. One single piece of paper with a line cut down the center, and I'll show you directions how to do that in just a few minutes. So, what isn't a zine has some edge cases. I was introduced through this research to prison zines, which are hand-drawn, not reproduced, handed from one prisoner to the next. As well, there are many cheap artistic zines that do not feature words and are apolitical, reveling in the art form for its illustrative qualities. All my early TTRPGs like Dungeons and Dragons, which came in loosely boxed form or as stapled pamphlets, could be considered zines. Free or low-cost homeless newspapers like Street News in New York or Real Change in Boston, which were sold for like $1 back in the 80s and 90s, and were a way for homeless people to make money. Were popular across the United States and can be considered zines. They were more professionally made, but the point was to get across a political idea. They had images, they had words in them, and they were super important, absolutely, along the way to, where we are on the internet today. Some weird themes over the years in this research. The furries are well represented. From cartoons today on the internet, they're everywhere, especially, as I said, on Tumblr, to 1993. That's an image of a furry zine that was made back in the day. The bottom one is a political ad from the 1800s, and the people have always been anthropomorphizing humans for satirical, for political, for all sorts of silly reasons. And this exists in zine form a lot because it is not as acceptable in the mainstream media, for sure. I can draw a line very easily between political cartoons of the 1800s and memes today, where you're combining words and images to try and get across a third meaning that references the two of them. This has a lot to do as well with Gen Z humor, and Gen Z humor is absolutely important to I notice that there is a mix. I there is a mix between the image and or I'm sorry, the referent is more important than the original. Absolutely. So here we go with the 8-page zine. I'll go in lunch. And this 8-page zine is the easiest way to do it. You can Google this 8-page zine and find this direction whenever you want. This is a super easy thing to just put down on a copier. It is a single page, and you can make yourself, boom, 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 a 8-page zine. Absolutely. Another recommendation as well I have is Making Comics by Lydia Berry. It really kind of pushes home that you don't have to be good at drawing in order to make comics, in order to make zines. It's super cool and a really fun read, and it is made on the most cheap paper ever. It's silly. It's like a discount Bible kind of paper that it has. My There we go. Okay. Happy to get this through, and yeah, if anybody has any questions, I would love to answer them about zines, about punk rock, all my flyers from back in the day. Have a good little collection of those. And Moxie, which I can highly recommend for sure, and show some of the images that the child makes in there. That is her zines as she is fighting the power in her high school. More Moxie zine images. Yay. Like I said, this is a replacement Writer's Lunch, and I'm very glad to get it done today. A little bit shorter than usual, y'all. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute or toss them into the chat. And other than that, we will see you next week for what's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? The next month is next week, my apologies, is going to be cryptids with Anna. And all about the history of cryptids. And I'm going to copy this link right here, toss this up there for the Gunzier workshop about making zines that's going to happen in December. And cryptids, as you are saying, Carrie, cryptids are Bigfoot, lizard men out of the swamps, different creative monsters, usually from the 19th and 20th century, that are vaguely human and intelligent, oftentimes. So cryptids are those strange characters that that go bump in the night. So we're doing spooky things for most of October, and sorry I didn't have too much spooky in here. A little bit of horror with the Penny Dreadfuls, but that's as far as I got with that. Thank you so much for coming to Writer's Lunch today, guys. Really appreciate it.